My boyfriend has Asperger's syndrome. He is a genius in the field of physics. But he is paranoid and rigid. He flew into a rage when I moved his cup. I understand his perfectionism and never crossed the line again. Until I found the watch pattern drawn with a ballpoint pen on his wrist by his junior fellow apprentice. It was crooked, naive, and cute. I asked, "Don't you dislike it when others touch you?" He said inferiorly, "She just thought it was fun. It can be washed off." I nodded and suddenly realized that his rules could actually be broken. It's just that he wouldn't make an exception for me. When I pushed open the door, the private room suddenly fell silent. Jason was sitting in the main seat. The empty seat that should have been reserved for me beside him was already occupied. Jason is highly sensitive and adheres to principles. Every time we eat out, he must arrange for me to sit on his left side. But today, someone had taken that seat before me. The atmosphere was eerily quiet. The girl hesitated for a moment and stood up, looking nervous. "Are you Sister Sherry?" "Hello. My name is Yuki. I'm Jason's junior fellow apprentice. It's our first meeting. Please take care of me." Her voice was sweet. And her attitude was polite. She spoke to me but glanced at Jason. "Senior brother. Did I sit in the wrong place?" Ellen, who was sitting on Jason's right, said. "Yuki. Sister-in-law always sits on Jason's left. Come and sit beside me. There's still a seat here." Upon hearing this, Yuki didn't move immediately. Instead, she looked at me with red eyes and said, "I'm sorry, Sister Sherry. I didn't mean to sit here. I didn't know. I just wanted to discuss the project with senior brother." Her voice choked with sobs, as if she had suffered a great grievance. I looked at her and didn't say anything. Suddenly, Jason spoke up. "That's enough." He looked at me, his eyes showing some dissatisfaction. "It's just a seat. There's no rule about who has to sit where. You can just sit here." Yuki bit her lip and said softly, This doesn't seem right. After all, Sister Sherry is your girlfriend. There's nothing wrong with it." Jason glanced at his watch. "Let's have dinner since everyone is here." I stood there and didn't say a word from beginning to end. Yet it was as if I had done something to bully others. And Jason had come to the rescue. Alan glanced at me, and a trace of pity flashed in his eyes. In the end, I sat in the only empty seat beside him. At the dining table, everyone was chatting and laughing, welcoming the little junior fellow apprentice Yuki into the academic family. They are all top scholars in the field of physics, with a promising future, and they have a mutual appreciation for each other. They naturally talked about their projects and discussed the future development of the industry. Those professional terms were like a foreign language to me. I couldn't understand them, let alone join in the conversation. I turned my head and saw a glimmer of light in Jason's cold eyes. It was the admiration he showed when listening to Yuki talk about her research direction. Jason's world is filled with physics, which is his greatest glory in life and the most precious source of his passion. He sometimes talked to me about these things. But he lost his enthusiasm for sharing when he saw the confusion in my eyes. However, Yuki could understand. She understood his passion and could draw inferences from one instance, leading the conversation in a more in-depth direction. Tonight, on Jason's usually cold and icy face, other expressions appeared rarely. Curiosity, admiration, tenderness, and even doting. These were expressions I had never seen before. They talked a lot and discussed many things. So much so that in one night, they talked more than Jason and I had talked in a month. I silently looked at Jason and suddenly met his sideways glance. He was taken aback for a moment, as if he had remembered something. However, the next second, his gaze shifted, because Yuki asked him when they would meet the supervisor. He arranged it smoothly and didn't have time to glance at me again. I lowered my eyes and suppressed the sour feeling in my throat. Looking at the cold sweet and sour spare ribs on the plate, I thought that Jason hadn't eaten much today and would definitely be hungry at night. However, he probably wouldn't care at all. Just like he wouldn't care about my loneliness and embarrassment. After that dinner party, I didn't see Jason for a long time. He is very busy. Jason is meticulous and pursues ultimate perfection. Every day, heavy day. He is either doing experiments or writing papers day and night. Are you coming back for dinner today? I sent a WeChat message reluctantly. After an hour, there was still no reply. I scrolled up through our chat history. The last time Jason replied to my WeChat message was half a month ago when he sent me the address of the dinner party. After that, it was all my one-sided conversations. Jason. It's going to get colder today. Wear more clothes. It's so cold. I made sweet and sour chicken wings today. Do you want to come back for dinner? Picture. Jep Jason. I replaced the tulips in the living room. Should I also replace the flowers in your study for you? I didn't replace them. But the weather is really nice tomorrow. Let's go for a stroll in the park. The flowers are in bloom. They're beautiful. Park photo. Jep Jason. Are you coming back for dinner today? And so on. I slowly scrolled down. It was like a stage actor without an audience. Talking and acting alone. It was pitiful and a bit ridiculous. I reheated the food and started eating by myself. Out of boredom, I scrolled through my WeChat moments and suddenly stopped my finger on the screen. I enlarged the latest photo posted by Alan with the caption starting overtime work today. After looking at it clearly, my heart gradually turned cold. It was their laboratory. Alan took a photo of his own seat. And Jason's place was accidentally framed in the picture. Jason's desktop was in line with his style. Minimalist. Except for the necessary computer hardware and books. There was nothing else. Even the water cup was placed in a specific position. However, in this photo, in front of the mouse on his desk, there was a pink doll. It had a pink dress, a high ponytail, and two round eyes looking playfully ahead. A toy wasn't anything unusual. But it was exactly the same as Yuki's outfit at the dinner party that day. What was even more unusual was that it appeared next to Jason's otherwise empty computer. It was so special and yet so eye-catching. I felt my mind go blank. My hands and feet turned cold. And my fingers stiffly zoomed out the picture. Under this WeChat moment, Yuki commented, "Oops. I accidentally got into the shot." Their fellow apprentices replied, "If this doll is you, then who is the person next to Jason? Am I also a part of your little game? It's Jason's desktop. I'm getting the feeling of a romantic connection." Yuki replied, There were a lot of likes. All from Jason's junior schoolmates, senior schoolmates, and teachers at the same school. And among the rows of profile pictures, I easily saw the all-black profile picture. That was Jason's profile picture. And he never scrolled through WeChat moments. I stared at that black square for a long time without moving. I was like a hollow sculpture not knowing how to react. I remembered that a few years ago, when Jason and I just got together, I posted a WeChat moment to announce our relationship. I pestered him to like and comment on it. But he frowned and said, "I don't have WeChat moments. And I never look at them. But this is a record of us being together. Can't you make an exception for your girlfriend?" Jason just paused for a second and said firmly, "No." He kept his word. In the 3 years we were together, he never made an exception for me. His phone was always on silent mode. And he never answered WeChat video calls. Even when I had a high fever of 39 degrees and wanted to call him to accompany me to the hospital in the middle of the night, he didn't answer any of the 13 calls. Until the next morning. He replied impatiently, "Why did you call so many times? What's the matter? Didn't I say I had an experiment to rush through last night?" I was stunned by his shout in the hospital. I looked down at the infusion needle inserted into the back of my hand and smiled bitterly. "It's nothing. It's all right now. If it's nothing, don't call. It's annoying." The beeping sound of the hung-up call pierced my eardrums. Since then, I never took the initiative to call Jason again. The only way we communicated was through WeChat messages. Even though he only replied to 1 out of every 10 messages at most. Coming back to my senses, I swiped my finger and liked this WeChat moment. Then I went back to the message list. For some reason, I swiped Jason's profile picture. I clicked confirm when it asked if I wanted to cancel pinning the message. I thought I didn't have any other intentions. I just suddenly felt that a chat box that had never received a reply, even if it occupied the best position, was simply ignored by others. It was completely useless. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I was woken up by the vibration of my phone. I got up with difficulty. When I saw the name Jason, I immediately became half awake. Hello? Jason. What's wrong? I was a bit surprised. It was the first time Jason had called me so late. I was afraid that he hadn't eaten dinner and his stomach problem had flared up again. I was anxious in my heart, but after he spoke, I felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured over me. Go and cancel the like on Alan's WeChat moment, he ordered coldly. I didn't react at first and asked in a hoarse voice. What? He exhaled heavily, as if he had run out of patience. Vaguely, I heard a low sob coming from the other end of the phone. A soft and delicate voice of a girl. Seeing your brother. Don't call Calvin. It's so late. I really didn't cry because of this. When I realized what was happening. Jason's voice came again. You like Talon's WeChat moment. Cancel it. It was so absurd that I actually laughed strangely. Why are you laughing? There was a hint of confusion and a trace of barely noticeable annoyance in Jason's tone. I asked. You called me so late just to ask me to cancel the like? Jason fell silent. But I couldn't stop laughing. Everything was so strange. Yet so logical. Yuki was unhappy and cried because of my like. Jason didn't ask why and didn't waste time comforting her. Instead, he officially called me to deal with the person who caused the problem. How concise and forceful. How principled. I slumped back onto the pillow, feeling a slight coolness in my ears. I said in a hoarse voice. Jason. What? I asked a question. Is there anyone in this world that you care about? Jason fell silent, not knowing why I was suddenly acting crazy and asking such a meaningless question. Yuki's crying stopped. And instead, she said sweetly. Thank you, senior brother, for the milk tea. I blinked and looked at the colorless ceiling in the dark. For the first time, I took the initiative to hang up on Jason's call. I thought I didn't need him to answer this question. The answer was already right in front of me. Jason was already famous in high school. It wasn't just because of his good looks, but more because of his astonishing intelligence. As early as his second year of senior high school, he was guaranteed admission to a top national university by participating in a physics competition. He no longer had to attend classes, but he still left home early and returned late like the rest of us ordinary people. Because of the doctor's advice, he needed to maintain normal communication with society. Even though he never communicated with anyone. A talented person with a good-looking face is the object of every girl's fantasy. There were many people chasing him, but none of them succeeded. Most of them were mercilessly rejected by him. As cold as iron and without showing any mercy. A girl's secret love always happens in unexpected details. That was the only intersection I had with Jason. During an ordinary class skip, I lay sprawled on the lawn behind the school, waiting for this boring history class to end so that I could sneak back to the classroom without anyone noticing. The spring breeze was gentle, and the sun was shining brightly. The comfortable temperature made me drowsy, and I almost fell asleep on the not-so-comfortable lawn. Suddenly, my eyes darkened, and when I opened them, I saw an English book above me. Jason's beautiful eyes looked down at me from above, landing in my pupils like feathers. A pleasant voice came to my ears. If you want to sleep, it's more comfortable under the shade of a tree. I was lying down, and he was standing, looking straight at me with his head lowered. The white school uniform outlined the slender body of the young man. He stretched out his hand to block the sun from me and didn't move a bit. I closed my eyes and ignored him. I thought to myself, it's none of your business. And when I woke up from my nap and saw the book still hanging above my head, my heart gave a subtle throb. I sat up and asked, are you crazy? Standing there without moving. Aren't your hands sore? Jason blinked his eyes. They are sore. But since you didn't go under the shade of the tree, I could only block the sun for you. He said naturally. This way, add fulfilled my obsession. You'll sleep more comfortably. He said it as if it were the most natural thing. But his hand suspended in the air was trembling slightly. What was I thinking at that time? I looked up at the young man's light-colored pupils, with a serious and stubborn expression, and thought. Jason was like a piece of white paper without any wrinkles. unaffected by anyone or anything. What would it feel like to step into his world and become the only mark on that piece of paper? So I tried my best. I chased after him, got closer to him, tried to understand him, and be with him. It seemed that I succeeded, but in fact, I failed completely. I couldn't squeeze into his world and couldn't get a place in his heart. I think I've done everything I could. I've hit the wall on the road of liking Jason and still haven't turned back. Only now have I realized that this is just a wrong path that leads to nowhere. In the end, I didn't cancel the like either. Instead, Alan silently deleted that comment and the long WeChat moments with the like. The next day, Jason surprisingly came home. Unexpectedly, heading to Sasha. He wasn't frowning. His expression didn't change much. But from my observation over the years, I knew that he was in a good mood. When Jason got home, I was just about to go to work. When I saw him come back, I was actually taken aback. "Why are you back?" Jason was a bit annoyed. "It's my own house. Can't I come back?" His words always have a way of being irritating. But I'm already used to it. "Okay. I'm going to work now." I lowered my eyes and nodded. Then walked past him and headed outside. Jason's expression changed. And he suddenly reached out and grabbed me. Asking awkwardly, "Going to work so early?" My gaze shifted from his hand to his face. Feeling a bit confused. "Is there a meeting this morning?" he asked softly. I looked at him for a while and then forced a bitter smile. Then, I pulled his hand away and said in a flat tone, "Jason, I go to work at 8:30 and leave the house at 7. I've been doing this for 3 years. After saying that, I looked up and saw a flash of embarrassment in his eyes. That's right. He never cared about me. How could he know when I got up and when I left the house? It's just that we happened to meet today. And he had nothing to talk about. I smiled bitterly in my heart. Why bother? I'll drive you to work. This was the second time today. I almost looked at him with pity in my eyes. And I didn't know whether this pity was for him or for myself. When I first moved here, I was filled with the joy of finally living with Jason and didn't realize that although this place was quiet and far from the urban area, it was miles away from where I worked. I had to get up early at around 6 o'clock every day. After a flurry of packing, I had to squeeze onto the subway for an hour and a half to get to the company, which made me miserable. I once boldly acted coquettously with Jason, "Jason, drive me there. It only takes 40 minutes to get there if there's no traffic jam. I want to sleep a bit longer." But he pulled my hand away and firmly refused. "You chose to move in with me. I reminded you of this before. If you're not used to it, you can just move out." His 3 sentences left me speechless. It's not true that I wasn't sad. But I'm so smart. I told myself that this was his style of sticking to principles. I found countless reasons and finally blamed it on my inability to drive. Looking back now, it's really ridiculous. Later, I never mentioned asking him to drive me again. But today, he took the initiative to offer. Jason probably remembered the past just like me. He was stunned for a moment and then withdrew his hand. I twitched the corners of my mouth and didn't say anything. Before turning around to leave, Jason said one last thing to me, "Yuki and Alan and the others are coming to the house today. If you don't cook, we can order hot pot for delivery." So, this was the point. I ignored his tone of notification and nodded. "I'll work overtime tonight. You guys can order takeout." Jason behind me was silent. I thought he should be frowning. But I didn't look back. I stood blankly in the elevator, thinking a lot in my mind. The last sentence that stayed in my mind was what Jason said. This was his house. His house alone. Yes, hadn't fulfilled session. This was his house. He could do whatever he wanted. Invite whoever he wanted. Even if he kicked me out right away. Who would dare to say no? I was just a tenant who had been living here shamelessly, and was living under his roof with his infinite tolerance. And the rent was free. Thinking of this, I actually smiled at my own black humor. So I opened my phone and started searching for rental houses. When I got home at night and opened the door, I smelled a pungent aroma. I frowned unhappily, but then forced myself to smooth out my brows when facing everyone. "Sister-in-law, Alan saw me and greeted me warmly. Come quickly. We just started eating. Brother. Didn't you say sister-in-law was working overtime and wouldn't be back for dinner? You gave false information. Jason looked at me. And a flash of surprise that disappeared in an instant passed through his eyes. Didn't you say you were working overtime today? He came over and took my bag. I looked at him. And after a moment of surprise, I still handed it to him. I smiled and said, yeah. It went smoothly. The project is coming to an end. That's just right. Our stage is also over. Finally, hadn't fulfilled website. You and sister-in-law Jason have time for a two-person world. Another junior whistled and winked at Jason. The sound of people egging on was interrupted by a voice. Senior. You can't eat spicy food. Sit here. Yuki patted the seat beside her and called Jason to sit over. The room suddenly fell silent. But Yuki seemed not to notice and looked at Jason stubbornly with her eyes. Alan was very observant and tried to smooth things over. That's right. Everyone. Sit down quickly. Make yourselves at home. Don't be polite. His act of taking charge and joking made everyone burst into laughter. And the awkwardness disappeared. In the midst of the laughter and chatter, Jason slowly and naturally walked over to Yuki's side. He sat down. The girl smiled happily, prepared the dipping sauce for him, and asked if he wanted to have scallions. Out of the corner of my eye, she met my gaze. Her eyes were filled with the excitement of victory and disdain. And I stood there, like an outsider, watching this farce. A sense of exhaustion from the inside out filled my whole body. I thought I should be angry, should be sad, should curse Jason and then slam the door and leave, but I didn't. The adult world requires dignity. I just took my seat, ate quietly, and obediently played the role of a backdrop. I talked with Jason's friends. On the surface, I was friendly and polite, but my mind was filled with other thoughts. I thought, if I hadn't taken the plunge and moved in, if I hadn't settled down here as if it were my home, decorated it, and bought so many things that I couldn't move out immediately, if I hadn't been stupid, if I had made up my mind earlier, if I hadn't fallen in love with Jason, would I not be in such a mess now? Yuki, I didn't expect you to take over so quickly. Someone at the table said, this project is quite complicated. I thought you would need some time to adapt. It really caught me by surprise. You're a talented girl. Yuki smiled modestly. Senior is just teasing me. She seemed to think of something and said, actually, it's all Jason's credit. I often bothered him when I was in the United States. But Senior is really nice. He replied to every message and also replied to the emails in great detail. I asked him about a lot of questions to get familiar with the project in advance. Sometimes I even wonder if he's always online. Which is why he replies so promptly. What? Are you serious? You're not kidding? Everyone exclaimed. Jason is known for not replying to messages and often doesn't even answer the phone. Now I get it. Senior. You're showing favoritism. As soon as the words were out, everyone started making a ruckus again. Yuki lowered her head shyly amidst the teasing and said some playful words like, Senior is just being kind to me because he thinks I'm pitiful. She took out her phone and showed it to everyone, proving that all the emails were about the project discussion and there was definitely nothing improper. From September last year to March this year, there were countless emails going back and forth. There were more than 100 of them. I couldn't hear what else was said later. I just felt that my blood seemed to freeze. Hundreds of letters and countless messages were laid bare in the open. I stiffly turned my head and met Jason's gaze. He frowned and looked at me, as if he wanted to say something. My eyes were swollen and painful, and I couldn't stop the blurriness. I thought I had been tempered through countless hardships and was invulnerable. I thought I had already given up on Jason's indifference and stubbornness. But when the difference was laid bare in front of me, I still felt it hard to breathe. Jason has Asperger's syndrome. He has a thin emotional state and is sensitive and inconsistent. He pursues perfection, sets countless principles, and doesn't allow anyone to break them. He has a fixed breakfast every morning. 2 eggs, a glass of milk, and the bread is only toasted on one side. His cup can only be placed 5 centimeters to the left of him. I once didn't notice and placed it on the right, which made him furious. He doesn't answer the phone, doesn't reply to WeChat messages, and has explicitly forbidden me from entering his study. One by one, I have strictly followed these rules. He has never made an exception for me. So I thought he would never make an exception for anyone. It turns out that the exception isn't me. That's all. He allowed Yuki to put her doll there and let Yuki sit on his left side. He read every one of her emails carefully, replied to them earnestly, and patiently answered every question she raised. He would reply to her WeChat messages in less than half an hour, responding to every sentence. Even a playful goodnight emoticon would receive a corresponding goodnight reply. It turned out that Jason wasn't unaware of the ways to make others happy. He wasn't incapable of having those touching exchanges that are common among normal people either. Yes. He was so smart. How could he not know what to do? He was excellent at learning. And he learned quickly and well. I taught him over and over again. Yet I still received no response. Not even once. It turned out that it wasn't that he couldn't learn. He just didn't want to apply it to me. Even though my tears didn't fall, Jason still noticed my emotions. He knew what I was thinking. That's why there was a trace of bewilderment that flashed across his face, which was as cold as a mask. There was a cry of surprise from behind. It turned out that Yuki had cut her finger while cutting fruits in the kitchen and was bleeding. Everyone's attention was drawn to it. Jason glanced at me and then got up and walked towards the kitchen. And I, like a deserter, actually felt grateful for Yuki's little trick. I fled from this suffocating house as if running for my life. The moment I closed the door, tears welled up in my eyes and streamed down my face. Even if a person's heart is like ice, with 3 years of sincere company, it should have been warmed up, right? But I was wrong. Jason wasn't like ice. His world was like a tightly closed door. No matter how much I knocked, how hard I crashed into it, or how recklessly I made a scene with all my passion, I could only end up bruised and battered, covered in wounds. And Yuki, effortlessly holding the key, opened the door right in front of me. Without any effort at all. Because Jason was willing to let her. And he couldn't decline her actions. I squatted at the entrance of the convenience store wrapped in my coat and hung up one call after another. Until there were no more calls coming in. I sent a WeChat message to Jason, I'm taking a walk downstairs. You guys have fun. There was no response. The autumn night was already filled with a chill. The chubby auntie clerk seemed to know me, and smiled as she poured me a cup of warm water. Dear. It's so cold. Why don't you go home? Home? Go home? That wasn't my home. It was Jason's home. But the auntie said, don't cry. Dear. What's the matter that can't be solved? Go home. Take a hot bath. And have a bowl of hot wontons. Tomorrow will be a wonderful day. Won't it? You're so pretty. It makes people feel sorry to see you crying. Here. Drink the water and go home quickly. I was stunned for a moment. Looking at her kind face, I suddenly didn't know what to say. Yes. Who can't live without someone else? When I open my eyes tomorrow, it will be a brand new day. A brand new beginning. All mistakes can still be corrected in time. Thinking of this, I took a deep breath, wiped my face with my hand, and nodded to the auntie. Thank you, auntie. I will go home. I'm going home. When I got home, it was already late at night. Everyone had left. The dining room had been cleaned up, except for the faint spicy smell in the air. There was no trace left. The door of the study was ajar. I knew Jason had something to say to me. Otherwise, usually, the study door would be tightly closed and wouldn't leave even a crack open for me. I knocked on the door and saw him sitting in front of the desk with a frown, not knowing what he was thinking. Being in a daze was a very strange thing for Jason. Jason asked, "Where did you go?" He was very dissatisfied with my leaving halfway. I didn't answer and just asked, "Is there something wrong?" My indifferent attitude seemed to catch him off guard. Jason paused. After thinking for a while, he seemed to choose a relatively light topic. "Just now, your cat ran out and was touched by them." I didn't quite understand why he suddenly brought this up. He didn't like my cat. He always treated it like air and kept his distance from it. thinking that he was annoyed again by Dodo's sudden appearance. I said wearily, "Is that so? I'm sorry. It won't happen again in the future." However, Jason didn't seem satisfied. His frown deepened, and there was some confusion in his eyes. Just as he was about to say something, I saw the abrupt pattern on his wrist. Jason had a cleanliness obsession. Except for a watch, he didn't wear any other accessories on his body. He washed his hands many times a day and would never leave any marks on his body. But now, on his wrist, there was a watch drawn with a colored felt-tip pen. Right in the middle of the watch, there was also a playful and cute heart. I stared at it for a long time. I remembered that at first, when I didn't know how to restrain myself, while Jason was asleep, I painted clear nail polish on his index finger. When he found out, he was furious and looked at me with disgust, asking me to remove it for him. He even locked himself in the bathroom for over half an hour and washed his hands until they were red. It was as if what I had put on his hand wasn't nail polish but something extremely disgusting and filthy. Yuki drew it. "It was the punishment for my losing the game just now," Jason explained. Following my gaze, I asked softly, "Don't you dislike it when others touch you?" After saying that, I realized how stupid I was. Jason really didn't like others touching him, including me. But Yuki was an exception. She wasn't like the others. It was the punishment for losing the game. And I agreed to it. For some reason, Jason unexpectedly repeated it, as if trying his best to explain. "And it can be washed off. It doesn't matter." I looked up and stared into his stubborn and self-righteous eyes. My heart still ached. But I no longer had the urge to cry. So I nodded and didn't express any opinion. "Okay. As long as you like it." Jason's face darkened, and his frown tightened. He seemed not to understand why. Even though he had explained and had a valid reason, I was still unhappy. "What kind of temper are you throwing now?" Jason said. "Ever since Yuki came back, you've been pulling a long face. She has tried her best to be friendly to you. Do you really want to make everyone so awkward? Just now, your cat even hissed at her." She was scared but still smiled and said it was okay. "I didn't want to tell you this originally. Sherry. Don't go too far." I looked at his face and suddenly felt that he was a stranger. Jason added, "Yuki is my junior schoolmate. She's still young, so I'm more tolerant of her." "Jason. Let's end this." I interrupted him suddenly. The man was stunned. As if he didn't understand what I meant. "What? So?" I repeated it slowly and firmly. I said, "Let's break up. Do you understand?" Early the next morning, I packed all my things. I had lived here for 3 years. And I thought I had a lot of belongings. But it turned out that except for a cat, everything else could fit into one suitcase. "I'll move to a hotel first. I can't take Dodo in. So I might have to leave it with you for a couple of days," I said calmly to Jason, who was sitting on the sofa. "If you mind, I can send it to a pet store for boarding." He looked at me with a solemn expression. Since he didn't say anything, I took it as his acquiescence. After all, he hated Dodo to the extreme. How could he allow it to stay any longer? "I'll go to the company first and come back to pick up Dodo after lunch," I said considerately. "I'll lock it in my room for now. If there's anything, call me." With that, I stood up and left. Jason, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, "Sherry, are you serious?" I nodded. "Yes." "Why?" He asked for the reason for the breakup. I thought about it carefully. There were too many reasons. But in the end, I still said, "No reason. I just don't want to continue this anymore." Jason said in a calm tone, "If you don't make the reason clear, I won't break up." Hearing this, I smiled. It was very much like his style. He always got to the bottom of things. Insisted on finding out the ins and outs. Even when it came to breaking up, he had to sort out the logic and judge whether the result was reasonable or not. With Jason, there wasn't the slightest bit of affection involved in this. I smiled and said to him, "Jason, I'll teach you one last thing. I hope you can learn it this time. Breaking up is a personal choice and doesn't require asking for the other person's opinion. I choose to leave you. Just like you chose to shut me out for a whole 3 years. As immovable as a rock. Irreparable. Jason fell silent. I thought he understood and let out a sigh of relief. Maybe our beginning was a mistake. But at least the ending was peaceful. But this thought shattered instantly when I got home in the afternoon and saw Yuki's flushed face. She was leaning weakly in Jason's arms, holding the back of her hand, looking on the verge of tears. When she saw me open the door, her expression showed a moment of shock, and then she looked at Jason in a panic. The atmosphere was strange and tense. Jason was also very nervous. He took a step forward and protected Yuki behind him. Sherry, why did you come back so soon? I smelled the faint smell of blood in the air. My gaze slowly moved from Yuki's skinned hand to the floor of the living room. My blood froze. And for a moment, I could hardly breathe. On the blue towel, motionless, lay my cat. It was covered in blood, like a tattered yellow cloth, and had long since lost its breath. Calvin. I'm sorry. Yuki weakly showed the wound on the back of her hand. It's my fault. I insisted on going into your room to see the cat. I clearly knew I was afraid of cats. When it pounced on me and bit me, I reacted too violently. Dodo jumped off the windowsill. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. You can hit me. Calvin. I'm so sorry. There was a hissing sound in my ears, and I couldn't clearly hear what she was saying anymore. I touched Dodo's cold body, turned around without saying a word, grabbed Yuki's hair, and gave her 2 loud slaps. Ah! She shrieked. Senior. Help me. My eyes were bloodshot. I sealed the windows. Unless you opened the lock and opened the window. How could it have jumped down? Jason came up to pull me. Sherry. Calm down. Calm down? How do you expect me to calm down? I gasped heavily and cursed Yuki. Bitch. You animal. You won't die a good death. Sherry. Jason hugged me tightly in his arms. Seeing me crying despairingly, he comforted me with a pained expression. The thing has already happened. Yuki has also been scratched and needs to get a rabies vaccine. Please calm down first. Okay? I'll buy you another one tomorrow to compensate you. It will be more beautiful and gentle. Is that okay? Don't cry anymore. I lay in his arms, looking at Yuki, who was covering her face and looking down at me, and at Dodo's cold and stiff body. The suppressed emotions could no longer be contained and burst out. I grabbed Jason's collar and asked him while crying. Jason. Is your blood cold? It doesn't matter if you don't like me. But what did Dodo do wrong? Jason and I picked it up on a rainy night. We raised it from the size of a palm to what it is now. Even if it were a stone. After 3 years of companionship, one should be moved when it's gone. Right? Not to mention that it was a living little life. I took care of Dodo since it was a kitten. But it seemed to like Jason more. Since Jason didn't want it to get close, it could only circle around his feet. Every time Jason came home, it would wait for him at the entrance in advance and meow happily at him. It didn't know Jason's dislike for it. It only knew that it loved its master. What a stupid, silly cat. No wonder Jason didn't like it. After it died, he could even say that he would buy another one to replace it. When I was tired from crying, I pushed Jason away and stumbled to my feet. I carried Dodo's body out the door and ignored Yuki's sticky concern behind me. Senior. Get up quickly. The floor is cold. Yuki. Suddenly, I turned around and caught the hatred in her eyes that she hadn't yet withdrawn as she looked at me. I just smiled and said to her word by word, I don't want this man, Jason, anymore. If you like him, I'll give him to you. But this matter today isn't over. You'll pay the price. Just wait. The news of my breakup with Jason spread like wildfire. I deleted all his contact information. But in the end, I found that it made no difference whether I deleted it or not. Anyway, we hardly ever contacted each other. After settling Dodo's affairs, I sat on the balcony on the top floor of the hotel and dialed a phone number that I hadn't used for a long time. The other side answered quickly, and a man's deep voice came with a teasing tone. What? Did you admit defeat? Yeah. I let out a sound, and my thick nasal voice couldn't hide my emotions. What's wrong? Sherry? The man's tone became serious. Who bullied you? Jason? Finally. I choked up and softened my attitude towards the man. I admit defeat. Brother. I shouldn't have stayed here without listening to you. I miss you. And I miss Mom and Dad. Can you come and pick me up? They all bullied me when you weren't here. Tears welled up in my eyes. And I cried my heart out. Scaring Calvin, who was on the other side of the ocean, half to death. So the next day, the man appeared in front of me. His face was dark. And he hugged me. I've always said that scumbag Jason can't be trusted. Back then, you didn't come with me and insisted on staying in the country. I'm asking you, do you really not like him anymore now? I buried my head on Calvin's shoulder and nodded. I don't like him anymore. I'll never like him again. Okay. Calvin said, and that Yuki. Right? Just watch how I deal with them. Calvin has always been resolute and efficient in his methods. Yuki came from a well-off family. But she studied for both a bachelor's and a master's degree in the United States and was dressed in luxury brands from head to toe. Without Calvin having to do much. With just a little digging. There was a lot of dirt on her. There were things like thesis plagiarism, academic fraud, having an improper relationship with teachers, and even photos of her entering and leaving hotels with different men. Any one of these things, if made public, could ruin her reputation. As soon as the post was published, it caused a stir on the internet. I didn't have the time to care. During the week when I was preparing to go abroad, Calvin dragged me around to have fun. According to him, Dad doesn't manage the company anymore now. I'm exhausted working day in and day out in the United States. It's not easy for me to come back and pick you up. Don't you want me to relax? He was steady and reliable. But deep down, he was still the same brother who used to leave me to get into trouble everywhere. After resigning, I enjoyed my freedom and gradually got out of the shadow of losing Dodo. The only thing that made me unhappy came from Jason. One early morning, I received a call from an unknown number. But the voice was both strange and familiar. Jason's voice was hoarse. Sherry. I was stunned and didn't react in time to hang up the phone. He was like a helpless child, saying some inexplicable words. Sherry. I can't find my tie. In the past, I was always the one who tidied up Jason's clothes, putting them away one by one and hanging them out in advance in the morning for him to wear. I was like a nanny, meticulous and proper. It was normal for him to be a bit unaccustomed since he was used to a life of luxury. So I said, I can't find it either. Jason. You can hire a nanny. No. He stubbornly said, I don't want to. I said infuriately. It's up to you. I'm just giving you a kind suggestion. There was a moment of silence on the other side. Just as I was about to hang up the phone, Jason suddenly said, Sherry. I was wrong. I miss you so much. Can you please not leave me? After a long while, I said softly, Jason. Not everything is like a formula deduction. Rigid and fixed. Just because you hold the beginning, you can't assume that the ending is destined. I'm a person, not your certain and unchangeable data. I once asked Jason why he would rather chat with Yuki for a few hours and talk to me a few more words. At that time, he just sneered and said, Can you understand the things we talk about? He was right. I really couldn't understand. So I stopped trying to understand physics and no longer had any interest in getting to know Jason. Let it go. Before hanging up the phone, I said seriously and firmly, Jason. Maybe I once loved you. But that's all in the past now. Calvin said he wanted to ruin Jason. But he couldn't find any dirt on him. Jason was sincere in academics and in dealing with people. Except for work-related exchanges with Yuki. The things they talked about privately were also very boring. Is this kind of boring man even worthy of you fighting over him? Calvin disdained. But he also couldn't do much about it. It seems that his family's company has a project recently which is being coordinated with a branch company. How about I reject it? I gave him a blank look. Knowing that he was just talking big. Forget it. Besides not liking me and being sorry to Dodo, he hasn't done any other wrong things. Leaning against the porthole, I looked at the changing scenery under the clouds. Anyway, I won't see him again in the future. And I don't want to have any more connections with him. It's a good thing you think like this. Sherry. Calvin patted me. But your brother has also vented your anger for you. The project he just completed recently was taken over by someone else. All his efforts were in vain. And it can drive him crazy. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but looking at the sincere love in Calvin's eyes, I suddenly said, "Thank you, brother. Thank you for being able to pick me up and take me home after I've been fooling around for so long. My real home." Half a year passed in the blink of an eye during my days in Los Angeles. I went back to school and started my student life again. My parents were very happy that I could be reunited with them. And the smile on Calvin's face gradually became more frequent day by day. Everything was changing for the better. I once received an email from Alan. He told me about Yuki being expelled from school and his apology to me. Finally, having fulfilled he said that Jason voluntarily gave the project data in his hand to him. After strongly pleading with the supervisor, he came to the United States for an exchange program for a year. I was stunned. Alan said, "Sister Sherry, everyone could tell that Jason wasn't in a good state after you left. If the supervisor couldn't stand it anymore, he wouldn't have let Jason go. With Senior's ability, he's sought after wherever he goes. The supervisor was afraid that Senior wouldn't come back. Sister Sherry, will you still go back to the country?" At the end of the email, he asked me a question that seemed irrelevant. I didn't answer. The sun was shining brightly outside. I was sitting in the library, looking down at a paper book. Suddenly, a voice came from behind me. The voice was faint, as if it came from a long time ago. "It's sunny here. Sit over there. It's more comfortable. Sherry." The end. My father is gentle, wealthy, and he loves my mother very much. My classmates all envy me for having a happy family. Until I accidentally caught my father having a secret rendezvous with a strange woman at home. He was wild and eager. Like a beast. I let out a scream and fled in a panic. My father chased after me and threatened me. "Don't tell your mother. You don't want this family to fall apart, do you?" At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, during the break between classes, I rode my bicycle and rushed home in a hurry to get my exercise book. It was hot, and although the journey only took about 10 minutes, I was already sweating when I got home. There were cold drinks in the refrigerator, which were very tempting. But thinking that I had to rush back before the next class, I chose to go to the study first. I had just taken 2 steps when something flashed past the corner of my eye. I paused and then stepped back. It was a pair of beige high-heeled shoes with thin heels. Shiny, and very beautiful. At the moment, they were rather messily discarded in front of the shoe cabinet. I was stunned. Last spring, my mother accidentally sprained her ankle. Since then, she couldn't wear such high-heeled shoes anymore. So, whose shoes were these? Before I could figure it out, a strange sound came from the direction of the innermost master bedroom. Almost without thinking, I followed the sound. The door of the master bedroom was half open. Through the gap of about 10 odd centimeters, I saw my father, Victor, hugging a strange woman. Ah! I instinctively took a step back and bumped into the door of the opposite room. The 2 people in the room both turned to look. Time seemed to freeze in an instant, and we just stared at each other without moving. No, it can't be. I don't know how long it took, but I was the first to catch my breath. I let out a scream and turned to flee towards the door in a panic. "Olivia!" My father seemed to be suddenly jolted awake. While he jumped out of bed in a hurry, he shouted loudly, "Wait a moment. Olivia! Listen to what Dad has to say." My mind was in a complete mess. I didn't even bother waiting for the elevator. I buried my head and stumbled into the stairwell. When I was almost at the first floor, my father caught up with me. "Olivia! Wait a moment. Things aren't what you think." He was panting, and there was sweat on his forehead. I saw it all. I glared at him. "Do you still want to quibble? That's the bed where you and my mother sleep. You actually brought some random woman from outside back here. I could hardly go on. "How can you be worthy of Mom? Olivia." My father's face turned red, but he wouldn't let go of my hand. "Dad was wrong. It's all Dad's fault. You don't understand adult matters. Dad was just muddle-headed for a moment. Muddle-headed for a moment? I wiped my face and only then realized that I was already in tears. Then let me ask you. Who is that woman? And when did you start having an affair with her? Olivia. Being questioned like this by his own daughter. My father felt very embarrassed. I didn't. Your mother hasn't been in good health recently and can't. I'm also a normal man. Just this once. I promise there won't be a next time. I promise. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I broke free from him. You're so disgusting. You don't deserve Mom being so good to you. I must tell Mom. Right now. Olivia. Do you want to break up this family? Just as I took a few steps, a slightly choked voice came from behind me. I stopped abruptly. Dad really knows he was wrong. Please give Dad another chance. Seeing my hesitation, my father came up and pleaded in a low voice with red eyes. Whether you believe it or not, Dad loves your mother and you. Dad has never wanted to hurt you. If you tell Mom today, our family will be over. Olivia. Is this what you want? My father had never spoken to me in such a tone and with such an expression. He was good-looking, successful in his career, and had a happy family. He was full of confidence wherever he went. Even my classmates joked. Olivia. Your dad is simply the standard image of a domineering CEO. Oh no, no. I'm smitten. I took a step back. I don't know. I shook my head, looking panicked. I don't know. Then Dad is begging you. Think about it carefully. My father raised his hand and smoothed my sweaty bangs. There was also a look of pain on his face. Even if you're still angry with Dad, you should think about your mother. She's always been strong-willed. She won't be able to bear such a blow. I suffered from insomnia. I lay on the bed in the dormitory, took out my phone, clicked on my mother Megan's name, typed out what had happened today word by word, and then deleted them one by one. How should I say it? Should I say that the husband you've known for more than 20 years, who accompanied you all the way from school uniforms to wedding dresses, has actually already cheated on you? And he even lay in your bed with another woman? What would Mom do then? Mom trusts him so much. Can she bear it? Will they get a divorce? But if I don't say anything, isn't it the same as deceiving Mom together with that person? How pitiful Mom would be. So many questions weighed on my heart. I was only 17 years old at this time and didn't know what to do. I could only hide under the quilt secretly and cry my eyes out. I was exhausted the whole day the next day. What are you thinking about? After I didn't respond to her again when she talked to me, my roommate Sunny leaned over to examine my expression. Nothing. It's nothing. I avoided her gaze. By the way, patting my obsession. What did you just say? Who isn't coming? That top student from the next class. Your #1 competitor. Sunny lowered her voice. But actually, her grades have dropped so much in the past few months that you've already left her far behind. You mean Cindy? I was a bit puzzled. What's wrong with her? Why isn't she here? I heard she's going to take a leave of absence from school. Sunny cupped her mouth with her hand. It's a rumor. Don't spread it around. It seems like last year, Cindy's parents got a divorce. And then they both remarried soon after. Her father is busy having a son. And her mother doesn't care about her either. I thought she was acting strange before. Turns out she got depression. And her grandmother took her back to their hometown. Hey. Olivia. Why is your face so pale? Are you sick? Olivia? Sunny reached out to touch my forehead. It's okay. I suddenly feel a bit dizzy. I forced a smile and changed the subject. Cindy has gone back to her hometown. Then what about the college entrance examination? She definitely can't take it. How can she take the college entrance examination when she's in the hospital? At this point, Sunny let out a sigh. Actually, hadn't fulfilled my ambition. I can really understand her. You know, my parents often quarrel. Once, they quarreled so fiercely that my father even mentioned divorce. At that time, I told them that if they got a divorce, I would stop studying. What's the use of studying if the family is gone? Right. Olivia? I stared at her blankly. Olivia, do you want to break up this family? My father's words rang in my ears again. I instinctively shook my head. I really envy you. Sunny walked towards the washroom with a cup and toothpaste. As she walked, she continued, your parents are both so excellent. And the family atmosphere is so good. Unlike us. Huh. Envy? I also used to think that my family was indeed something to be envied. But now, I lowered my head and looked at the two names pinned at the top of WeChat. After hesitating for a long time, I finally clicked on my father Victor's chat box. I cannot tell Mom. Gritting my teeth, I sent a voice message. But you can't have any more contact with that woman. I promise. My father replied instantly. Then another message came. Thank you. Olivia. I'm not doing this for you. Tears welled up in my eyes. After holding them back for a while, I still said, why did you do this? How could you become like this? Dad. Do you know that I don't even recognize you anymore? To me, Victor used to be the best father. When I was a child, our family lived on the first floor. And there was a lawn outside the window. So, there were always a lot of mosquitoes every night. At the worst times, when I woke up in the morning, both my eyes were bitten by mosquitoes and were so swollen that I couldn't open them. It was my father who stayed by my side all night, carefully swatting mosquitoes so that his little daughter could have a good night's sleep. Later, when I went to school, I became a lively and naughty primary school student. Many times when Mom Megan was at her wits and because of tutoring my homework and we almost had a falling out, it was Dad who took over the exercise book, figured out each question clearly, and then patiently explained it to me. He never scolded me. Even when I threw a tantrum and refused to do my homework, Dad would just rub my head and say helplessly, why does all my Olivia's cleverness show up in this? So, the relationship between father and daughter has always been very good. Even now, whenever we need to cross the road when going out together, Dad will habitually hold my hand. That's why I'm even more heartbroken. Whether I'm willing to admit it or not. While I don't want Mom to be deceived and betrayed, I also don't want to lose Dad and this family. I hope that none of this had ever happened. And my family would be the same as before. Mom and Dad could always be in love. And I could always be willful and act coquettously, without having to grow up. Olivia. Trust Dad one more time. Sensing my emotions, Dad pleaded bitterly. Dad can't leave your mother. And I can't leave you either. You two are Dad's life. Dad really knows he was wrong. You'd better remember what you said. I wiped my eyes and said harshly in a hoarse voice. If you do something to betray Mom outside again, in my heart, you will no longer be my father. I don't want to see you for the rest of my life. After sending this voice message, I locked the screen and squatted on the ground, crying. My father suddenly became less busy. In fact, for the past year or so, at least 5 nights a week, he either worked overtime or had social engagements. And even weekends were no exception. But since that incident happened, he started going to and from work on time. Sometimes, he even came back earlier than Mom, who worked as a civil servant in the Social Security Bureau. His changes couldn't escape Mom's notice. What's going on with you recently? Is the company not in need of you anymore? On Friday night, while Dad was peeling a pineapple with a fruit knife, Mom asked casually. Dad froze for a moment. What are you talking about? Isn't it good for me to go home early and stay with you? He leaned over and whispered in Mom's ear. Olivia is growing up, and she will be farther and farther away from us in the future. How about we have a second child? Go away. Go away. Mom pushed him away with a smile. I'm over 40. What's the point of having a second child? So what if you're over 40? There's a senior woman in our company who is 1 year older than you and has just finished her maternity leave. That's her. Anyway, hadn't fulfilled my obsession. If you want a second child, you have it yourself. I'm content with just having Olivia. How can I have a child by myself? Dad put down the pineapple and moved closer to Mom. Come on, wife. Before the child gets out of school. Just as the two of them were joking around, I pushed the door open and came in. Why are you home so early too? Mom was surprised. Didn't you have the second evening self-study class? Yeah. There was a power outage at school, and they asked us to go home and study on our own. I looked at Mom and noticed the curve of a smile on her lips. I couldn't help but glance at Dad. Dad coughed awkwardly. Just in time. Olivia. Come and have some pineapple. I heard you've been coming home early lately. Does that mean your so-called overtime work before was just a pretense? I walked over and sat down at the table. I lowered my voice and said to him after Mom went into the kitchen. Dad's expression froze. Olivia. I'm your father after all. Don't you have any trust in me? Trust? I checked online. The shoes that woman was wearing are from a niche luxury brand in France. I turned my head to look at him. Don't tell me she's just a what-I'm shampoo girl. If I'm not mistaken. She's from your company. Right? Is she your secretary or someone else? Did you work overtime before just to mess around with her? Dad visibly froze again. So it's true. I gritted my teeth. Don't you forget what you promised me? Aren't I home now? Dad peeked into the kitchen. Olivia. Can we let go of the past? Your mom is still at home. I pressed my lips together. I want to let it go. But during these days of living at school, I've been worried every moment that Dad might run out and get involved with that woman outside again. I'm even more worried that Mom might find something out. There are many consequences that I don't want to think about and dare not think about. The more I don't want to think about it, the more the scene I saw with my own eyes that day keeps repairing in front of me over and over again. For the first time, I couldn't concentrate at all, even during the monthly exam. I didn't finish answering the test questions. Since the top student was in a situation like this, the head teacher was bound to call the parents. Mom couldn't believe it when she rushed to the school. She has always had great confidence in me. In her eyes. Although I was naughty when I was a child, I was smart. Moreover, my talent in science gradually emerged after I entered high school. Even if my parents didn't care too much. My grades were firmly at the level to get into prestigious universities like Tingshui University, Peking University, Hudan University, having fulfilled my exasha, and Shanghai Jiaotong University. Is it because the big exam is approaching and the psychological pressure is too great? The head teacher, who was in his 40s, pushed his glasses. According to my experience, the better a child's academic performance is, the higher their self-expectations are. At this time, you parents should not put more pressure on the children. We didn't do that, Mom said, looking confused. Anyway, her state hasn't been right in the past few days. Not to mention that she didn't finish answering the questions this time. I found that she seemed to be in a daze several times during class. Just looking at her eyes, you could tell that she wasn't following the teacher. There are some things that it's not appropriate for us teachers to say to directly. The head teacher said worriedly. I suggest you have a talk with Olivia. Don't criticize the child. The main thing is to understand her thoughts. If there are any problems, we should communicate in a timely manner. Mom nodded repeatedly. She thought the same way. In fact, both Mom and Dad graduated from prestigious universities. So naturally they would expect me to be at least as good as them. But when it comes to setting a specific goal for my daughter to achieve in the exams, they really haven't done that. So, are you facing any difficulties? In the evening, Mom specifically greeted the dormitory supervisor and took me home. Then, let out a low sigh. My mom and I sat on the terrace and had a heart-to-heart talk. It's nothing. I lowered my head. Are you worried that you won't do well in the exam? Mom guessed. Actually, Olivia, the college entrance examination has a certain degree of contingency. Mom thinks that for anything, as long as we try our best, we can accept the result calmly, no matter what it is. Does anything include everything? I was silent for a while, then raised my eyes to look at her. Mom thinks so. Mom put her arm around my shoulder. One should be able to take risks and also accept failure. Besides, you started school earlier than others. If worst comes to worst, we can repeat a year of school. I'm not talking about the college entrance examination. I avoided her gaze. Mom, do you remember Cindy? She's taken a leave of absence from school. A leave of absence? Why? Mom was very surprised. Before, her father had an affair, and her mother insisted on getting a divorce. Later, they each had their own families and no one cared about her. Maybe coupled with the pressure of studying, She got depression. I glanced at Mom carefully. She has always worked very hard. If it weren't for this incident, she would definitely be able to get into a good school. Yes. Mom sighed. Parents who can't manage themselves well are making their children suffer. However, Mom changed the subject. We can't blame her mother either. Of course. There should be mutual tolerance in marriage. But this doesn't include issues of principle. It's like you really like a toothbrush. But if someone else uses it to brush the toilet, can you pick it up and use it to brush your teeth again? It's simply impossible. After saying that, Mom smiled. I thought you had some serious concerns. It turns out you're just feeling sorry for Cindy. Caring about your classmates is a good thing. But don't let it affect your own studies. Okay? Mom doesn't tolerate any deception. I had no choice but to go back to school in silence. The next day, I applied for temporary off-campus study on the grounds that I needed to adjust my mood recently. I want to keep an eye on Dad myself. After all, Dad is a senior executive in the company. Although he didn't do his proper work many times before, there are still real overtime work and social engagements. But I seem to have a psychological shadow. As long as Dad comes home 10 minutes late from work, I can't help but send him a message asking where he is and who he is with. Olivia, I'm your father. Not a prisoner. Can you give me at least a little respect? Once, Dad couldn't stand it anymore and said each word slowly. I also think I might have gone too far. Moreover, Dad has been changing. After all, he is the father who has loved me since I was a child. And I really want to trust him. Then you absolutely can't have any more contact with that woman, I reminded. I promise, Dad said firmly. My heart gradually settled down. I told myself that as long as I forget that incident, life can be the same as before. However, no one expected that the slap in the face came unexpectedly. I had a bit of a cold that day, so I asked for leave. After taking the medicine, I went back to my room to sleep. I was in a daze when I suddenly heard the sound of the door slamming. Then, let out, there was a suppressed argument coming from the master bedroom. I got up and peeked out through the crack of the door. Tell me clearly. Is it you? Mom stood at the door of the master bedroom with her back to me, grabbing Dad and questioning him. Why do you think I have a problem just because you got that disease? Dad blushed. Maybe it was because you went swimming or the hotel you stayed in during your business trip wasn't clean. Mom shook her head. I haven't gone swimming for almost a year. I don't even know when the last business trip was. And I clearly saw that you had that. It's just an allergy. Dad was anxious. Megan, I'm your husband. Can you stop throwing all the blame on me? You think you haven't been exposed to the source of infection, so you suspect me. According to this logic, I could also say that you've been fooling around outside and infected me with the disease. What did you say? With a bang, I pushed the door open and went in. I stared at Dad with wide eyes. Dad, what did you just say? Dad was at a loss for words, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Olivia? It was Mom who panicked first. Why are you at home? I'm asking. What were you just talking about? I insisted. Mom and Dad exchanged a look. It's nothing. Olivia, do you want to have boiled fish for dinner? Mom will make it for you. Mom. I raised my voice. He just said those things to you. Don't you know that he has already? Olivia. Dad interrupted me. He grabbed my arm firmly and forced a smile. The watermelons in the fruit store downstairs are new. Your mom likes watermelons the most. Come on. Go with Dad to pick one out. Let go of me. As soon as we got out of the house, I shook off Dad. You actually infected Mom with that disease. You're so disgusting. So disgusting. You said it was just that one time and that you wouldn't mess around with women outside anymore. The more I said, the more aggrieved I felt, and tears streamed down my face. I shouldn't have believed you. Olivia. Dad lowered his voice, with a hint of pleading on his face. I really haven't been with her again. I didn't expect this to happen. Can you trust Dad one more time? Then tell me. Who is that woman? Dad's face froze. You won't tell me, right? I stomped my foot. If you don't tell me, it proves that you two are still involved. Her name is Vanessa. Dad avoided my gaze and pursed his lips. She's a salesperson in the company. As I expected. She's from your company. I nodded. Okay. You said you broke up with her. Then fire her. How can I do that? Dad instinctively retorted. Seeing that I was about to get angry again, he quickly explained. The company isn't mine. Besides, she hasn't done anything wrong at work. How can I fire her just like that? You're the general manager. And you can't even make the decision to fire someone? I wiped my face hard. I don't believe it. You just don't want to part with her. What do you mean I don't want to part with her? Dad was embarrassed. You're still young and don't understand these things in the company. Vanessa is a sales manager with good performance. If I fire her for no reason, what will others think of me? It's not easy for your father to get to where he is today. You don't want the employees to talk about me behind my back. Do you? What about Mom? My tears fell again. Just now you had the nerve to shift the blame onto Mom. What do you want me to say? Dad sat down on the flower bed by the roadside and buried his face in his hands. Olivia. I know you look down on me now. But Dad really has no choice. Even for the sake of your grandmother. Can't you give me a chance? She's old and can't stand this kind of shock. I shook my head. I'll take your mom to see a doctor. I promise I'll get her treated no matter where we go. Okay? Besides, your mom is a civil servant. If others find out that she's getting a divorce because of this, how will they think of her? My father raised his head. And the corners of his eyes were wet. Olivia, I'll write you a guarantee. I promise that apart from your mom, I will never do anything out of line with other women. Otherwise, I'll leave the house with nothing. Okay? I had never seen my father cry before. I avoided my mother and went back to school with the guarantee letter. The next day, I skipped to classes, went to my father's company, and found Vanessa through the receptionist. As soon as Vanessa saw me, her face changed. I've made some inquiries. I raised my chin and looked at her as if she were something dirty. You're already married and have a 2-year-old son. Do you think your husband and son will feel ashamed that they know about your affairs outside? So what? What are you going to do? Go and tell them or ask your father to fire me? Vanessa asked. You. I didn't expect her to be so thick-skinned. I opened my mouth for a long time but couldn't say a word. Little girl. Vanessa smiled instead. She patted me on the shoulder. It's an adult's game. And you don't understand. Anyway, having fulfilled my obsession. Your dad won't get a divorce. And I have no intention of being your stepmother. We each get what we want. Can't you just turn a blind eye? Isn't that better? Shameless. I was so angry that my whole body was shaking. Come on. Don't worry. Vanessa didn't care. I don't have to have him either. As long as you can keep your dad in check. I promise to control myself. Is that okay? Little girl. Be more open-minded. That's just how the world is. I managed to take the 3rd diagnostic exam and only went home after it was over. It seemed that my father had already coaxed my mother. He was cooking in the kitchen. And my mother was leaning against the door, chatting with him off and on. The warm yellow light in the house spilled over the two of them, creating a warm and gentle atmosphere. I watched for a while and then turned back to my own room. Everything I did was right. I did it to keep this family together, I told myself. In the following days, as I had hoped, my father found the best doctor. And the two of them went for treatment together. To ensure that my mother could rest well and recover faster, my father took on most of the household chores and even washed my mother's underwear by hand. As for me, my father also went to communicate with my teachers several times and asked someone to contact a famous teacher from the college entrance examination quest and setting team to specifically tutor me in the relatively weak composition section. I increasingly felt that I had done the right thing. That is, until the day of my grandmother's birthday when I received that friend request. The request read, Victor seduced my wife, sent photos of private parts, and booked a hotel room during a business trip. At that time, I had already arrived at the private room of the hotel where the birthday banquet was being held, and my father was sitting opposite, chatting cheerfully with our relatives. Come out with me. I whispered in my father's ear while the relatives weren't paying attention. What are you doing, child? I'm talking to your uncle and the others. My father stopped halfway through his words when he noticed that something was wrong with my expression. He had no choice but to stand up and walk out of the private room. We didn't stop until we reached the fire escape where there was no one around. What's wrong? My father was a bit confused. Look for yourself. I turned around, with tears welling up in my eyes. It's so disgusting that I can't even say it out loud. The words on the phone were now in front of us. My father's face turned red all of a sudden. But his lips were a bit pale. What's going on? Who sent this to you? He frantically clicked on the other person's profile picture, hardly daring to look me in the eye. How would I know? I gritted my teeth. You promised me. You clearly promised. This is slander and rumor mongering. My father came to his senses and grabbed my shoulders. Olivia. I definitely didn't do it. Trust me. At my age. How could I do such a thing? Do you dare to say that you didn't sleep with that woman? I questioned. It was a moment of madness. I definitely didn't send her that kind of thing. Why are you two father and daughter here? My father's words were interrupted as someone pushed open the door of the safety passage. Oh. Eldest sister. My father forced a smile. There's something about the child's studies. And we're communicating about it. Matters related to studies. Indeed. Need to be communicated about. My aunt turned her gaze to me. Olivia. There are only 3 days left until the college entrance examination. Right? Which school are you planning to apply to? I kept my head down and didn't say a word. Any school will do. My father said evasively. She has high expectations of herself and is under a lot of pressure. I actually think that as long as the child is physically and mentally healthy, it doesn't matter which school she goes to. Let nature take its course. You're right. But both of you are top students. So the child will be fine. As my aunt spoke, she turned around and walked back. My father followed her. I took out my phone. Looked at my red nose. Took a deep breath for a while. And then pushed the door open and went back to the private room. Anyway, I had to celebrate my grandmother's birthday first. Sitting at the table, I kept trying to comfort myself. But not long after, the door of the private room was pushed open with a bang. My mother, Megan, walked in with red eyes. Before anyone could react, she slapped my father in the face. The room fell silent instantly. Victor, you really are something. My mother's expression was almost ferocious. You said I wasn't paying attention. Look at what you've been doing outside. You even slept with your female subordinate and came home pretending to be a good husband and father. Do you have any shame? My father's expression froze. And he instinctively looked at me. Olivia, do you feel uncomfortable if this family doesn't break up? He said harshly. I didn't. I took a step back and shook my head in a panic. But my mother suddenly turned her head. You knew about this too? She widened her eyes and stared at me blankly. I opened my mouth but couldn't say anything. The whole room fell into a deathly silence. Megan. Finally. My grandmother spoke. Her voice filled with pleading. Don't jump to conclusions. It's my birthday today. And with my health, I don't know how many more birthdays I'll have. Can we talk about this when we get home? Yeah. Sister-in-law. Don't we all know my brother? It must be a misunderstanding. Let's eat. Everyone is here. I'll go and check on the dishes. My father's cousins also chimed in to smooth things over. Wife. My father tried to take my mother's hand. My mother shook him off, took a deep breath, and pulled out a chair next to the old lady and sat down. During the meal, she didn't say a word, and there was hardly any expression on her face. She just quietly removed the fish bones for the old lady and accompanied her to cut the cake. When the old lady blew out the candles, she cried and secretly punched her son hard under the table. I vaguely felt that the happy family in the past was like sand in my hand. I had used all my strength, but it still couldn't help but drift away with the wind. However, to my surprise, after the birthday banquet, my mother acted as if nothing had happened. She still slept in the same room as my father, chatting and laughing. She even accompanied me to do mock exam questions every night, and the whole family discussed which school to apply to. I thought my father had managed to sort things out again. On the one hand, I was glad that my family was still intact. On the other hand, as an adolescent girl who had originally been full of yearning for love, I also began to wonder if there was truly sincere love in this world, just like my parents, who had entered into marriage from love and had been sweet for so many years. And who knew what lay behind that sweetness? My mother's outburst came on the last day of the college entrance examination. At that time, I had just come out of the examination room, and my father and mother were waiting at the entrance. "Let's go. I'll treat you to a meal," my mother said. I vaguely felt that something was wrong. Sure enough, when the meal was almost over, my mother took out the divorce certificate. "Olivia, I never expected that you would deceive me together with him." My mother's eyes were red, but her expression was calm. "I once thought that everyone in this world might betray me, but my daughter wouldn't. She was the one I carried in my womb for 10 months and gave birth to with all my might. She should love me the most and care for me the most." "Mom." I shook my head. "I didn't mean to. I just didn't want to." "I understand." My mother gently patted my hand. "Mom doesn't blame you. From your perspective, it's understandable. But the pain and humiliation that I've experienced, you'll never understand." At this point, my mother smiled and turned to my father, who looked dejected. "Do you know how I found out about this? A friend of mine went to the office building where your company is located to do some business. Someone was handing out flyers at the entrance. The flyer said that Victor, the general manager of a certain company, booked a hotel room with a female colleague during a business trip and sent private photos. There were also your photos and WeChat screenshots on it." Even though some time had passed, my mother couldn't help but clench her fists. "Victor, no one in the company told you about this, right? Everyone in the company saw your ugly face. But you still went to work pretending to be decent. Don't you think it's ridiculous? Of course. I'm no better than you. After all, there's no such thing as a wall that doesn't let the wind through." As she spoke, she gave a bitter smile. My father suddenly stood up. His originally red face had turned completely pale. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. "Mom." I shook my mother's arm. "Mom, I really didn't mean it. I didn't know it would be like this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." My mother broke free from me. She stood up, didn't look at anyone, and walked straight out of the private room. When I got home, I realized that my mother had given up my custody rights during the divorce, and all her things had already been moved out. "I hate you. I hate you." I stomped my feet and ran out. However, since the college entrance examination was over and the school dormitory had been returned, I had nowhere to go. I cried in the park opposite my house all night. Just before dawn, my father, Victor, found me. In the following days, I didn't want to recall them for many years, including the fact that I was hospitalized for a week due to a high fever, and that my grandmother passed away 2 months later. The only piece of good news, perhaps, was that I still got into the school of my dreams. My father paid all my tuition fees at once, transferred my living expenses to my card, and even made a will, leaving all his property to me. But we both knew that we could never go back to the way things were before. Even more, I hoped that I could keep my word and never see him again. As for my mother, I don't know. She would send me a red envelope on my birthday, but she rarely called. She didn't blame me, nor did she open up her heart to me anymore. Sometimes, I would wake up crying in the middle of the night. I still don't understand why the people I loved the most eventually became familiar strangers. I only know that I'll probably have to walk the road ahead alone.